Groupie continues his fine form. Semenyo shooting! It had to be! It simply had to be Antoine Semenyo!
Frank's got to go, but there's a break in the relationship now. I mean, at the end of the game, Van de Ven, he's passionate, he's been incensed during the game, he comes over and he's calling a fan out for a fight.
I think all involved in Tottenham are devastated and frustrated at the end of the game that a performance like that.
I want him to be gone tonight.
Yeah, it was a night to forget for Spurs after they lost 3-2 to Bournemouth, who I think had gone without a win for 11 games. 95th minute winner for Antoine Semenyo. What a way to say farewell to the Cherries faithful before he heads to Man City. talkSPORT understands that medical actually is happening today. But we're going to focus on Spurs, and I've just seen a timeline of what was an absolute cluster of an evening for poor old Thomas Frank. At 6:37pm, he's pictured drinking his espresso from an Arsenal-branded cup. Obviously, Antoine Semenyo gets that winner at 9:30. At 9:31, several Spurs players involved in heated exchanges with away fans. And then at 2 minutes past 10, still brimming with fury, Spurs captain Cristiano Romero appears to take aim at the club's hierarchy in a social media post. So not a particularly good evening. And after the game, Spurs boss Thomas Frank spoke to talkSPORT's Alex Crook.
There were some boos from the away fans at the end of the game. Based on what you've just listed off there, the chances that you had, the endeavour and the effort that your players put in, was that a little bit harsh, do you think?
I think the away fans was very good. I think they backed us throughout the game. I think all involved in Tottenham are devastated and frustrated at the end of the game that a performance like that doesn't give more, at least a point, but maybe even 3 points. So that's why I think pretty obvious I'm also very disappointed. So I understand there's other people also disappointed.
Thomas Frank speaking to talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Cook after another disappointing result for Spurs. Delighted now to welcome in Chris Cowlin, who's the host of the Spurs Chat Podcast. Chris, I mean, there is so much to dive into. Let's start with the coffee cup. What do you make of it? Do you think people are sort of making too much of it, or is this just naturally what happens when the Spurs manager has an Arsenal coffee cup?
Max, Harry, good afternoon to you. You certainly know how to rub it in. Right. Of course, an extremely disappointing evening yet again under Thomas Frank in his first season at Spurs. We've had a lot of boos, and these boos at the moment are solely for him and not the team. But the whole coffee cup, I think it's just all been blown out of proportion. Of course, people notice these things when things aren't going for you. I think if Spurs had won the game, then it wouldn't have been noticed so much. But yeah, of course, Arsenal had just played at Bournemouth, and those cups were obviously in there. I know I had a big debate with someone earlier saying that I would have checked my cup. I certainly checked the cup that I'm drinking out of. I'm sure Harry wouldn't be caught with a Tottenham cup, and I certainly wouldn't be caught with an Arsenal one. But yeah, of course, when things aren't going for you, every single little thing, every minor detail, every photograph, every reaction is being looked at very, very carefully. But things aren't good at the moment, as you mentioned in the intro there, because boos for the manager. I feel like a lot of, or most of the fan base have given up on Thomas Frank with the style of play, with the performances from this Tottenham Hotspur team. But it's a mess across the board, if I'm completely honest, ranging from the board management to the coaching staff and the disconnect with the fans now. It seems that there are boos every week, either at home games or away games. And as you also mentioned, the players going into the crowd at the end, it's not a good look, is it?
No, and Chris, I don't want to dwell on the cup thing too much because, like you said, it's one of those things that it has only been blown out of proportion because Tottenham are not doing very well. If Tottenham had won the game, people might be looking at it and going, he's drinking Arsenal tears, for example. Exactly, there'd be some other spin on it. So I don't think that's as big an issue as it should be. Obviously, Tottenham fans don't want to see that. But I think if you're a sensible, logical person, you can understand how that might have happened, given Arsenal were the previous visitors there. Is it fair to say, though, Chris, because I was in and out of the Spurs game last night, and my main focus was the Manchester City game, but I was flicking back and forward between the two. when I've spoken to friends of mine, and listen, I've grown up in North London, I'm surrounded by Tottenham fans. I've got a lot of friends and family that are Tottenham fans. And all the conversations we've had this season have been around Thomas Frank's style of play, maybe Tottenham not being bold and brave enough. Last night wasn't a night, I don't think, to really stick the boot in on Thomas Frank's playing style. I thought Tottenham gave it a good go last night. So it's obviously a build-up of frustration, but it feels a little bit strange to me that seems to be the leading frustration of a lot of Tottenham fans, given that last night that probably wasn't the issue. Is that a fair assessment?
That is completely fair, Harry, and that is a very, very good point, absolutely. But there have been so many games that have been really boring. We've struggled to have shots on goal, but you're absolutely right. To dare is to do is our motto. We certainly did try to go for it last night, and that's exactly what Spurs fans want to see. But when Thomas Frank came in, I think I spoke to you at the start of the season, and I said that, this guy is going to bring calmness to Spurs, and, we're going to do much better defensively. When you look at the stats compared to Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham, and, all of you guys at talkSPORT have spoken, very negatively a lot of times about Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham last season, 22 league defeats, finishing 17th, etc. You would expect a lot better. So have we improved defensively? Have we improved across the pitch? I don't think we have, actually. And that is the worrying thing, because we're half a season in. And you do want to see, especially under a new manager, when a new boss comes in, you want to see week by week progression, and you want to see positive signs that you are going in the right direction. And that is the problem with a lot of Spurs fans at the moment, because, we can have a good game. And then we lose 3-0 away at Nottingham Forest and have one shot on target through Archie Gray. So there are a lot of these moments where, even the Arsenal game, I'll talk about that. We clearly went to Arsenal trying to set up for a draw. We went to Brentford the other night and tried to get a 0-0 draw. And then, Vicario at the end, 20 minutes to go, he's wasting time. And this isn't Spurs. This isn't Spurs, the fact that we're going to a place like Brentford, and all due respect to them, they're doing extremely well. But, to go to some of these grounds and then play for a draw, as I said, it is to dare is to do, and we should be daring a lot more and doing a lot more. I don't know whether you want to talk about the January transfer window. That in itself, Spurs need to be daring in the window, because Mohamed Kudus is now out until March. We've got injuries galore. Whoever is the Spurs manager needs to be backed in the right way, because we're just going around in circles, and it just seems that the football club haven't learnt from so many mistakes that have been made in recent years.
You've hit the nail on the head, though, there, talking about the club and the need to invest and the need to bring in the right players for Thomas Frank. Because when I look at it, I agree with you that defensively Spurs aren't as robust as I thought they would be under Thomas Frank. I thought he's going to come in, he's going to plug that hole first. It might not be as entertaining as Ange Postecoglou's football,
but it'd be pragmatic.
And Spurs lost far too many games last season because they had zero structure. So you almost expected it to go from kind of one extreme to the other. When it comes to Tottenham in the attacking third, though, I don't really blame Thomas Frank. I know people keep saying it's his style, but you think about who they're missing, right? They're missing Kulusevski, they're missing Maddison, they're missing Solanke, they're going to be missing Kudus now. Look at what else they brought in.
Yeah.
Xavi Simons hasn't worked. I'm sorry, nobody's going to convince me that that's worked. Kolo Muani's not at the level required. Richarlison's hit and miss.
Tell.
I know he scored again, last night, hit and miss. Yeah. I feel like Tottenham don't have the attacking talent to justify playing a sort of swashbuckling brand of football at the moment.
And tell me what you think, Chris, or to demand European qualification as if it's sort of quite an easy thing. And that's where I totally understand, Frank has to take some accountability here, and it simply hasn't been good enough. And it's interesting to draw the parallel between the criticism towards Ange, which was, I think, understandably quite intense, and maybe a lack of that towards Frank. But I just think that the playing squad you've got just simply is nowhere near it.
And that's on the club.
Yes.
Yeah, I completely agree, Max. And let me just say, firstly, that a lot of Spurs fans are getting very annoyed by this comparison to Ange Postecoglou last season. But I think a lot of people use it, including myself, because it was so bad in that league season. And when you're not even improving on the stats from last year, when it was such a poor league finish and poor results, it needs to be a lot better than that. And when you look at all of the stats, I think the only stat Thomas Frank has up on Ange is that we've conceded less goals, but we had scored a lot more. more and certainly created a lot more chances. But also, Harry, you mentioned those players, and I completely agree with you. We've gone from a forward line, including Harry Kane and Heung-min Son, to now the forward line now. Yeah. And I mean that with the deepest of respect as well. But when you look at the previous couple of seasons, we've let our top goal scorer in Harry Kane leave. Of course, in the summer, Heung-min Son left. And then in this January window, very early on, we've let our top goal scorer leave last season in Brennan Johnson. Yeah. I had hoped that, to see Brennan Johnson go out the door, I had hoped that Spurs would have had an ace or two up our sleeves and brought in players very, very early in the window. But when you hear Thomas Frank today, and I'll read you the exact quote, we're working very, very, very hard to improve the squad, but it is a very, very, very difficult window. What I would say a lot of the time is when you hear this term, and we hear this term a lot as Spurs fans about it's a very, very difficult window, I just think it means that it could be a very expensive window, and I think that's the issue. And we need to and I'm not one of these fans who rant and rave about, you need to go and spend money, The recruitment needs to be right. So whether we're buying in a £10 million player or a £70 million player, the players need to be right for the manager, and the players need to be right for the system that we are playing. And when you think about, us going around in circles, since 2019, we've had 6 different permanent managers in at the football club, including 3 interim appointments. And, we've gone around in circles, and we have to learn from mistakes. We have to do that.
I make you right. I make you absolutely right. And I think what the last few weeks has taught me, when you look at what's happened with Enzo Maresca, what's happened with Ruben Amorim, is that I've got no issue with fans being up in arms and frustrated. We've all been there with our clubs, right? Where we don't feel things are going as well as they could be. But I just want to make sure that the responsibility and the blame, if you like, is allocated to the right department and the right people. And I 100% acknowledge that Thomas Frank hasn't pulled up any trees at Tottenham, and it has been underwhelming and it has been disappointing. But based on what Chris is saying there and everything else that we're hearing, it feels like it can all be traced back to the football club. And I just want to make sure, and I've got no dog in the fight here, like apart from being a rival fan. I don't dislike Thomas Frank. Interviewed him many times, really, really like him. But I just want to make sure that he's protected from the trap that a lot of Spurs managers have fallen into before. Daniel Levy's not there anymore, by the way. Yeah. So you can't keep pointing the finger at him. It goes further up the line, further than even Daniel Levy was.
Yeah. The thing is, Harry, there is a lot to this. The board certainly need to back the managers a lot better. The player, in terms of quality difference, it needs to be better at the football club. But Thomas Frank needs to do a lot better job and play more entertaining football and not settle for draws, because that is not what Tottenham is about at all. And when you look now, when I go to the Tottenham Stadium every other week for the home games, there's more and more seats becoming empty. I've never known a seat empty in our stadium since we moved there in 2019. And this stadium is meant to be a game changer of us then competing at the very top, us competing for the top prizes, the Premier League, the Champions League, on a consistent basis, year in, year out. And at the moment, Spurs are sitting in 14th. And what I would say, whether you want to look at it from a positive point of view or a negative or whatever, Spurs are currently 6 points above 17th, where we finished last season under Ange. We are in this very weird season, this very weird league table at the moment. We're only 6 points away from 5th, which could be a Champions League spot. So what way does Spurs go? This second part of the season needs to be very, very positive. So it is absolutely imperative that Spurs go out and identify top talent to come in and help Thomas Frank in this second part of the season.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out in the January window. Chris, absolute pleasure as always. Thanks so much for coming on. Good luck for the rest of the season, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Brilliant. That is Chris Cowlin, host of the Spurs Chat Podcast. You're listening to the talkSPORT2 Social with William Hill, 18+.